The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the familiar tension of interspecies politics. Ambassador Zethkar of the Valorian Empire stood at the central podium, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the artificial starlight as he delivered what he believed would be the final blow to humanity's petition for council membership. Honored delegates, his voice resonated through the universal translator, carrying the weight of centuries of Valorian military tradition. We have observed these, humans for merely 2 of their centuries. In that brief time we have witnessed nothing but savagery, deception, and self-interest. They wage wars upon their own kind, exploit their planet's resources without consideration for future generations, and demonstrate a complete absence of the honor codes that bind civilized species together. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled delegates. The insectoid hive queen Zilla clicked her mandibles approvingly, while the ethereal luminous ones pulsed with satisfied light patterns. Even the typically neutral Traders Consortium nodded their bulbous heads in consensus. Human Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the designated observation area, her jaw clenched as she watched decades of diplomatic work crumble before her eyes. She had anticipated this moment. The Valorians had never hidden their disdain for humanity's perceived lack of honor, but hearing it spoken before the entire council still stung. Furthermore, Zethkar continued, his voice growing more confident, their own historical records demonstrate this pattern. They have no concept of dying with honor for strangers, no tradition of sacrifice for unknown beings. Their loyalty extends only to their immediate tribe, their nation, their species. This is not the behavior of a council-worthy civilization. The vote was scheduled for the next cycle. Sarah knew the outcome was all but certain. 3 systems away, on the mining outpost of Kepler 442b, maintenance engineer Marcus Williams was finishing his shift in the atmospheric processors. The facility supported 17 different species in the joint mining operation, a testament to the Council's ability to facilitate peaceful cooperation, even if humanity wasn't officially part of it. Marcus had been working these processors for 8 years, ever since his discharge from Earth's colonial marines. The job was quiet, predictable, and far from the conflicts that had defined his younger years. At 43, he preferred it that way. The first sign of trouble came as a vibration in the deck plating, too rhythmic to be equipment malfunction, too urgent to ignore. Marcus checked his scanners and felt his blood freeze. A cascade failure was building in the quantum containment system. The exotic matter that powered the facility's artificial gravity was becoming unstable. His fingers flew over the control interface, running diagnostics that confirmed his worst fears. The containment field would collapse in 18 minutes. When it did, the resulting implosion would create a localized black hole that would consume the entire facility and everyone on it. The evacuation klaxon began wailing as Marcus activated the emergency protocols. Throughout the facility, 17 different species received the evacuation order in their native languages. 17 different species began streaming toward the emergency shuttles with the organized panic of beings who understood exactly what quantum containment failure meant. Marcus was sealing the last atmospheric vent when he heard it, a sound that shouldn't exist in an evacuating facility. Crying. Not human crying, but the distinctive harmonic distress call of a Valorian juvenile. He found her in Storage Bay 7, where the evacuation route had been blocked by fallen debris from a damaged support beam. She couldn't have been more than 10 cycles old, her crystalline carapace still soft and translucent with youth. Her arm was pinned beneath a metal strut, and her desperate cries grew weaker with each passing second. Marcus checked his chronometer. 12 minutes until containment failure. He could make it to the shuttles. The evacuation route he'd taken was still clear, and he was already past the worst of the damage. He could leave her here and save himself. No one would ever know he'd found her. No one would blame him. Instead, he knelt beside the debris and began calculating leverage points. "Hey there, little crystal," he said softly, knowing she probably couldn't understand English but hoping his tone would be comforting. "Let's get you out of here." The strut was heavier than it looked, pinned beneath a collapsed section of ceiling that would require careful maneuvering to avoid bringing down more debris. Marcus worked methodically, using his military engineering training to assess the structural integrity of his improvised rescue operation. 8 minutes. The Valorian child's cries had faded to whimpers. She was going into shock, her normally brilliant crystalline surface growing dull and gray. Marcus had seen enough combat to recognize the signs. She wouldn't survive much longer even if he freed her. He activated his emergency medical kit, injecting her with a broad-spectrum stabilizer that would work on most council species' physiologies. It wasn't ideal for Valorians, but it was better than nothing. "Come on, kid," he muttered, straining against the strut. "Work with me here. 5 minutes." The metal shifted with a grinding screech, and suddenly the child's arm was free. Marcus scooped her up, feeling how light she was. Valorians had hollow bones, an evolutionary adaptation for their high-gravity homeworld. She would be fast if she survived. He ran through the facility's corridors, his breathing apparatus working overtime as he navigated around collapsed sections and sparking electrical systems. The child's weight was nothing, but the added burden of carrying someone else changed his center of gravity, slowed his reflexes. 2 minutes. Marcus reached the shuttle bay to find it empty. The last emergency craft had departed 30 seconds earlier. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the fleet of shuttles accelerating away from the facility at maximum burn, racing to escape the implosion radius. 1 minute. Marcus looked around the empty bay, then down at the Valorian child in his arms. Her large, multifaceted eyes were focused on his face now, and he thought he saw understanding there, the recognition that they were not going to make it. He carried her to the observation window and held her up so she could see the stars. "Look at that," he said quietly. "Beautiful, isn't it? Your parents are out there somewhere, probably worried sick about you." 30 seconds. Marcus felt the deck plating begin to vibrate as the containment field started its final collapse. He sat down with his back against the window, cradling the Valorian child against his chest, and began singing softly, an old earth lullaby his grandmother had sung to him decades ago. 15 seconds. The child's crystalline hand reached up to touch his face, and Marcus smiled. "It's okay, little crystal. You're not alone." The quantum implosion consumed Storage Bay 7 first, then propagated outward in a perfect sphere of absolute destruction. The emergency shuttles, now safely beyond the collapse radius, detected the exotic energy signature that marked the birth of a micro-black hole. Aboard the Valorian diplomatic vessel Honor's Edge, Ambassador Zethkar received the casualty report with stoic composure. His daughter Lithara was listed among the survivors, pulled unconscious from an emergency shuttle, suffering from shock and a compound fracture of her primary manipulator arm. It was only when he reached her medical bay that he learned the rest of the story. "The human," she whispered, her voice weak but clear, "stayed with me. He could have escaped, but he stayed." The medical officer, a seasoned Valorian warrior, nodded grimly. "We recovered his identification from the facility's security logs. Marcus Williams, maintenance engineer. The records show he had clear access to the evacuation shuttles until he diverted to Storage Bay 7. Zethkar felt something cold settle in his thorax. He knew the facility was about to implode? Every being in the facility knew, Ambassador. That was the purpose of the evacuation order. 3 days later, Ambassador Zethkar stood before the Galactic Council once more. The same chamber, the same delegates, but everything had changed. The crystalline plaque in his hands bore Marcus Williams' name and service record, etched in the traditional Valorian style reserved for those who died with ultimate honor. "Esteemed colleagues," Zethkar began, his voice carrying none of its previous certainty, "I stand before you to formally retract my previous testimony regarding human honor codes. We have misunderstood their nature." He held up the memorial plaque, its surface catching the chamber's light. "This human, Marcus Williams, died protecting my daughter, a member of a species he had never met, whose language he did not speak, whose customs were foreign to him. He had clear opportunity to save himself, yet chose to remain with a frightened child rather than abandon her to die alone." The chamber was silent now, the earlier murmurs of agreement replaced by thoughtful contemplation. "We Valorians pride ourselves on our honor codes, our traditions of noble sacrifice," Zethkar continued. "But our honor is bound by duty, by oath, by the expectations of our society. This human owed nothing to my daughter. His sacrifice was not compelled by duty or oath or law. It was simply what he chose to do." Queen Zilla leaned forward, her compound eyes reflecting the memorial plaque's light. "You suggest that honor without obligation is superior to honor bound by duty?"